Excuse me. This meeting will start a little bit late. We're waiting for one more alderman to have a quorum. I know Marshall Howden is in Hawaii on his honeymoon, and Cody had personal, something come up personally, and we now have
We're not working on Clay Cooper.
Let's not.
and as usual, we're working on Clay Cooper time.
Just glad I could make it at all. Thank you.
So with that being said, I'll call this meeting to order. Would you please stand with me for our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ted, would you lead us in invocation, please?
This is Jan Fisher Heights right here. Good afternoon. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for another beautiful day in the Ozarks, for the rain last night over our area, for the visitors that come here to not just for recreation, but to recreate, that we may serve you and provide city services that provide that experience here in Branson. Thanks for this board, for our staff that work hard here every day, and we love you and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Ted. Get a roll call vote, please.
Jenna,
Here.
Benson, Cooper,
Here.
Milton,
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Howden, LeBlanc.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll start off with our agenda discussing regarding the Board of Aldermen Conference and Travel, and it will be led by Lisa.
Thank you, Your Honor. The mayor had asked me to put together some of the training, upcoming training for the board, and see if there was
Lisa,
interest.
when you speak closer into the mic, please.
Maybe it's not.
Oh,
It helps to have enough. I'm sorry, the mayor had asked me to put together a discussion about current travel that the board could participate in, conferences. The Missouri Municipal League, I think you all have been aware that there's elected officials training coming up in June, from June 9th to 10th. Missouri Municipal League, their annual conference is September 11th through the 14th at Osage Beach. And we're really lucky to have the National League of Cities in our backyard this year in Kansas City, Missouri, November 17th through the 19th. Previous boards have traveled to these various conferences. And at this time, there is not any budget in your budget except $2,500 for travel, which won't get very far for any of these. So I believe probably where we're at is if there's any interest and if we are looking at potentially amending the budget. It was originally budgeted at $45,000 or proposed at $45,000 budget for 2022, and it was reduced back to $2,500. Any comments?
do we put up on the screen what the addendum, the attachment was?
I don't have that up.
Sure.
It's on the staff report. Can you pull up the stuff? It's this last page. There.
So, yeah, stop right there if you would.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as you can see, in previous boards, they were spending $35,000 a year. In 2020, when COVID hit, the board took action to dramatically reduce that. So the budget was still $30,900, and the board at that time spent $4,400. In 21, the board agreed to reduce our budget to $2,500, and we spent $600. So this year, the reason this is on the agenda is this year our budget remains at $2,500. I know that, would you scroll to those items that are the meetings? We have MML meetings, Missouri Municipal League. and National League of Cities. I wanted to bring this in public so we can openly discuss it, so the public knows what our thought process is. I believe there's a couple of these, especially that first one, there you go, is important for the mayor and board to attend, which is estimated cost per person. It's up in Columbia, so it's $400 per alderman and mayor. And then the municipal league, their annual conference. City has always attended those. We canceled them due to our cutbacks. We asked everybody to cut back, so it was only fair that the mayor and board followed that role. So I just wanted to bring this up for the board to have an open discussion on what your feelings are with the current budget of $2,500. We would not be able to attend these, and what your thoughts were, if any, of increasing the budget so this board can attend these future meetings. So board, I'm open for comments and suggestions. One breath, we're spending taxpayer dollars and we respect that. In the other sense, if the board can be educated and become better leaders, that's a value to our community.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Well, my question is, are any of these offered at a lower rate for online or live training?
I believe all of them have gone away from online this year, but I'm not sure, but I don't think any of them are online. I think they have went back to in-person.
Okay, thanks. And for the elected officials training conference, is that usually the same type of training for each election cycle? Because I know I attended last year.
Yes.
So if
Yes.
it's the same, maybe just the board
Yes.
members that did not attend.
Right. Correct.
Are you asking to do away with the 2,500 or make it less, or what was
The real question is by reducing our budget down to 2,500, and the city has attended these in the past, and it has provided, I think, great leadership for this board to represent our city more effectively. So the question on the table is what your opinions are of increasing the $2,500 budget to include one or all of these conferences.
Is that all of them? Just those three?
I think those are the three most important.
The three major ones,
Those are the
right?
three major conferences, yes. So without a calculator, do we have an estimate if we attended all three, what would that cost the city?
That was my question.
Yeah. So we're looking at
28. 91.
6, 12.
Well, if everybody's able to go, I think that would be one of the questions too, you know.
Yeah.
That's why I put those dates up.
Well, let's just, the scenario, if all 7 went to all 3 of those, what would that total be?
21,700, 22,000.
$22,000.
Well, and I did not include the first one. I mean, we could add 400, but as Alderman Denham said, if you've been there before,
Correct.
so I
But is
don't.
a $22,000 figure if all 7 went to all 3?
To the bottom two, and we would have enough in the 2,500 to do the
Oh, I
first
see.
one anyway for the,
Okay.
if anybody wanted to
So
go.
we have enough in the $2,500 budgeted amount for all of us to attend the first meeting, and it would be $22,000 for this board to attend the other 2 meetings. So I guess that's the question. How does this board feel about spending $22,000 of taxpayers' money for this board to go become educated and better city leaders?
So, Mr. Mayor, I think when it was decided to reduce that budget, it was out of necessity, based on the situation, the unknowns. And, with the precedent set that education is vitally important, I know every year I do continuing education to keep my license valid as a chiropractor and a physician. And, as an elected official, I can see where, being prudent and being responsible, I think it's incumbent on me to know as much about city government as I can, coming out of not knowing. Personality will only get you so far. In keeping with our motto, not too many jokes. But I think it's important. Continuing education in any realm is vitally important. But I think that we could be good stewards of the community's taxpayer dollars and still get educated. So I see it's something where we have to look at it just to get us up to speed.
Very well, thank you.
I think that's a lot of money to spend.
What's that?
I think that's a lot of money to spend to go to, of course, if it's budgeted, doesn't mean not everybody's gonna be able to attend it.
Right,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
I couldn't make any of those with my schedule, so there's just no way.
Well, there's a savings.
Yeah, I've already saved y'all money.
Well, and the last couple of years, the budget, even the budget that was there hasn't been used. Plus, it was reduced greatly. So the purpose that it was reduced for suited the need. It's definitely important to understand what goes on a municipal level. When you're coming into this, I didn't know what I didn't know. I'm learning very fast, and all of these people are playing a pretty good part in it. But I know there's more to know. But I think something that we could look at is, who can go, or maybe we look at maybe 3 people going or something like that, and then bringing back that information. That's also another way, because you're going to pick up key points that are vitally important, and those can be shared with the rest of the board at the same time without having to incur those expenses. Let's not just take a trip just to take a trip. Let's be, fruitful.
Thank you for that. In fact, that's very good input. So Clay's over here saying 22,000 is a lot of money. Ralph says he thinks it would be a good investment for our community, would receive the benefits of that expense. Chuck, how do you feel?
I'm all for more education. It's just if we can afford it or not.
So with that being said, Lisa, you want action taken? No.
If the board is interested, I think we should bring back a budget amendment.
Okay.
And then the money would be placed in the budget, and we would up that account to, if you want to do 22,000 or something
Okay.
like that. And obviously, there may be money left over if somebody doesn't go, or however they want to attend. And these are estimates, again, depending where you stay, especially in Kansas City, prices get a little, more. We just took an average, and if we know people want to go, there's some early bird things going out, so we just need that information.
Okay. So then you'll bring at a Board of Aldermen meeting a
Budget
amendment.
Mhm, for your travel
Sounds
to
good.
go up to 22,000 is what I'm hearing, in addition to the 2,500.
That'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
And let me just say that this is another example of the transparency from this board. These decisions are normally made at administrative level, and we want the community to be involved with our thought process. So, thank you. The next agenda item is discussion of finding a permanent successor to the city administrator role, and that will be led by Jan Fisher. We don't have a quorum. Let's pause for a minute.
We're on recess. Thank you.
That's what I meant to say. This is officially known as the Clay Cooper recess.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, the meeting's back in order.
All right, Mayor, Mayor, members of the board, I want to talk today about, is that better?
There you go.
I'll get the hang of this yet. So I want to talk about the process, if you will, for replacing the city administrator. You know, as we know, we've been without a city administrator for about a month. And so I would just want to walk you through a recommended process for a replacement. Obviously, it's going to be the board's discretion on how they want to follow through with these things. I just want to give you some insights on my career with respect to what I've done in finding senior level positions and things like that, and give you my advice and such. So that being said, the things I want to talk about today, just kind of an overview. You know, I want to look at and get your input. I've got Kimberly back there taking notes, so whenever we walk through this, I want to compile this information so that whenever we actually go do a search, we'll have all this information congealed in one spot and we can bring it forward. But the thing I want to look at is, you know, I kind of do a brief overview of the direction and priority of major upcoming events that we need to address. I want to look at what are the qualifications that you think should be, that the next city administrator should have, and what are the characteristics and traits that you want in a city administrator? Because that's one of the things, you know, from a basic premise of hiring employees, the number one thing I look at is character. Character is something you can't teach, you can't instill, you either have it or you don't. And so you want to ascertain what level of character they have first and foremost. I want to kind of describe to you what the city code looks like. You know, we've got specific information about the city administrator, and there's some of those things that we'll just take a look at real briefly. And then look at decision-making about the position, what's the role, how you want that to interact, what are the main attributes and things like that, the candidate selection overview, and then finally, the interview and selection process. How much do you want to be involved? How do you want to be involved? Those kinds of things. So that being said, I want to talk first of all about the upcoming projects we got. You know, clearly we understand that we've had some big changes throughout the organization. You know, in finance department, we've had some loss of leadership there. Planning and zoning, we had a reorganization there, and you know, all of these things have their own little subject matter in today's agenda. So I'll try to keep it succinct to each particular item, and then we can go deeper as we get to that particular subject. Like what we talked about Wednesday in the HR committee meeting, we're going forward with our compensation and staffing study. We want to make sure our employees are appropriately staffed and paid with respect to the jobs they need to do. We need to look at employee benefits. You know, that's a big hurdle for the next city administrator. We've got an opportunity to save some money there. Those are the things that it's kind of near and dear to me, and I want to make sure that we're doing the best for our employees and for the city itself. At the Compton wastewater treatment plant, we've got this big wall that we need to build to help with flooding and things like that, or prevent flooding. We've got a new fire station and police station we need to build. Economic development, these are issues that we need to focus on, make sure that we've got positive growth for the city. And then helping find additional revenues to help take care of those issues where we need to grow and things like that. So my first point of interjection is, what other projects or what other big rocks do you folks see that we need to make sure we accomplish?
There's a long list of priorities, and I'm anxious to review with this board in a public forum what some of those visions are. I know that, let me just say up front, I completely appreciate the process that government entity should go through in hiring leadership. What you'll probably hear me say throughout several of these discussions today is I would be remiss if I didn't share my personal opinions of just the core difference with the way business operates and government operates. So I'll try to go through this once and not have to address it on some of these other topics. We have been fortunate, extremely fortunate, to have the caliber of Lisa to fill in as our city administrator. There is not a person that has more knowledge, more experience at the city, character than Lisa. I don't know of anybody who doesn't highly, highly respect Lisa. Lisa has expressed that she does not have any desire to fill the permanent city administrator role. And so with that, my frustration is it's been a month and we're just now starting that process compared to in a business world when you need to replace leadership. I guess it's just acted upon more expeditiously. So I believe we would benefit, in fact, my personal opinion is every day that goes by that we don't have that role filled, I don't think we're doing our community living up to all the promises that we've made. So I know we're a month down the road and we're now starting the discussion of the characteristics and that of what we're looking for. I think you're spot on. Character has to be way up there because, like you said, you can't teach character, you can teach everything else. So my 2 cents is, in addition to the list you have up there, there's another list that I believe the community is expecting this board to act on. Any other comments from the board? Okay.
All right. You know, when it comes to qualifications, we can only look at what we see internally are success factors for a successful city administrator. The one thing, first and foremost, and we've seen it in the past where some folks haven't been as successful, is someone who has some actual hands-on experience. That's a big deal. Somebody who cares about the community. That's involvement in the community is also going to be a big deal. Somebody who has hands-on financial experience. We've had a couple of city administrators in the not too distant past where they allowed all of the financial decisions to be made by somebody else. I feel like from an organizational perspective, you have to have a good handle on that. Considering the nature of our organization and our community, we have to have somebody who understands what the big projects are all about. The whole Compton plant project, the whole fire station, police station, those are going to be some big deals that we need somebody that's got some hands-on experience with respect to that. Somebody that's got a verifiable background as a leader. It may be somebody who's got assistant city administrator experience somewhere else. Somebody that's got responsibility of a large department in a major city, that kind of thing. Somebody who's been through the battles, that kind of thing, to be able to lead this organization. Frankly, we've got a system here, an ERP, enterprise resource system here that is antiquated. It's out, it's probably from the 90s, I think. I'm just guessing. It's old. It was recently updated, but it's an old AS400 platform, which those are kind of pokey. But That's going to be a big investment for this organization to upgrade that. Understanding a fourth-class city and transition to a charter city. That's going to be a big deal. Somebody who understands what's involved around those things. Somebody that is able to grasp the 2030 plan, make whatever updates and improvements to it as necessary, and implement those things that are already in place. Mission focused, I think that's somebody that can take a plan or a direction, if you will, that the board gives him or her, and take it and move with it and get something done. And then I think, this is my own personal input where I slid this in, but it needs to be a trusted advisor to the board. I think, that trust is going to be a major factor in success, that person carries forward the board's wishes and is able to tell the board, hey, I wouldn't do that if I were you, those kinds of things. And then, of course, my HR background kicks in. No history of adverse employment action for cause. We don't want somebody that's hidden that they got fired someplace else. That is, in my mind, that's one of those red flags you want to make sure you're on top of. And we can do all sorts of background searches on that and figure that stuff out. So anyhow, do you have, and again, I ask for your input. What other desired qualifications would you have?
Okay. So I think this is the stuff that you can teach right here, right? Is it this list pretty much? And they have some history of it. Well, you asked earlier about what I would like to see or what, as a member of the board, and I just wrote a few things down. Integrity, courage, vision, loyalty, which you kind of hit right there. And then above all, that when making city decisions, they consider the residents of Branson and the employees of Branson city government and not how the political complexion would look. So it has to be for the people.
Okay.
Jen, I think you're spot on going through this list. I appreciate you bringing this to the attention of this board. Did you have any, Ruth, do you have a comment?
Well, I'd just like to really echo Alderman LeBlanc. It seems that our employees and residents have been left out of the equation quite a bit in the past, and being able to work with the community as a whole, being able to work with this board, you've touched on that. That's extremely important. We need a people person. We need a hands-on person that actually cares about this community and cares about what makes up the community and looks at it as a whole instead of just what kind of money is it going to bring in, because that seems to be the focus in the past. So yes, people matter.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you need department heads too to buy into what you're,
Yes.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's very important. And is it also, is the master's degree just part of that requirement as well? Or did I hear that, or?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a
Oh,
second.
okay, okay.
Okay, Jen?
All right. So, again, to Alderman LeBlanc's point of view, values-oriented, goal-oriented, someone who's authentic, relatable at all levels, needs to be able to go to the Parks and Recreation Department, talk to those folks, as well as talk to the board. Those kinds of characteristics where is believable at all levels. Open-minded. When the board gives that person direction and he or she believes something else, it needs to be open-minded and be able to be open to change. Creative, collaborative, somebody who listens. These are characteristics I look for in anybody that works in my department. Responsible and dependable, somebody that shows up on time, does what they're expected to do, those kinds of things. And someone, and this is kind of a big deal for me, somebody who's fully engaged. You know, not somebody that just shows up and puts in their time, somebody who really cares about the organization, cares about what the intentions are, and moves everything he or she can to make things happen. So again, I'm going to ask you, do you have any other desired traits or characteristics? You've pointed out yours. Courage is one that I think we need to make sure that resonates.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Jan.
Okay. Again, I'm kind of hammering this, but I want to talk about the desired skills. You know, there's going to be special things that we're doing that we want to continue with. You know, since in this past month, we've started a cultural change with the city of Branson. We're looking at not how can I get in your way to stop you from doing what you need to do, but we're getting how can I help you accomplish your goals. That's a big cultural shift that we're going to go through, and we need somebody that can focus on that. Somebody that's able to promote a pro-growth environment. You know, we're not looking at staying stagnant and keeping everything status quo. We're looking at growth. And Alderman Denham, to your point, somebody's got hands-on work experience that can roll up their sleeve. We don't need anybody that sits in their chair and kicks their feet up, plays on their iPad, that kind of thing. We need somebody that actually works. Able to ensure high-quality services, you know, make sure our public safety is up to date, our utilities department has everything it needs and things like that, and able to implement a structure of policies that ensure fair compensation across the board, not somebody that interjects their own ideas, and make sure we bring things to the board for approval and goes through the appropriate processes. Again, I'm hammering on the skilled at financial management, has a good accounting background, somebody that understands a balance sheet and things like that. Personally, I like the idea of a skilled negotiator. This is an area where we can save a lot of money because this is the kind of thing we need to understand, that we are not spending our own money, we're spending taxpayer dollars. And that's an important thing for us to remember, and the city administrator. Able to be engaged and involve the community, somebody that gathers that input, that doesn't just wait to be told to do it, that goes out and seeks that information. And a risk mitigator, somebody that sees the horizon for when we might have a problem coming up and lets us know well in advance what issues we need to address and what steps we need to take. And somebody that can hold him or herself accountable, and direct reports. The directors need to be held accountable for what they do as well. And this person needs to be able to do it. Needs to be able to present with understanding issues that face all city departments. Can't be just a focus area of, hey, I understand police or fire, and that's about it. Needs to have a full background that affects issues in finance, the clerk's office, the whole gamut, every organization, every department in the organization. So again, put it back to you. Do you see other desired skills and abilities that somebody's going to need to have to be in this position?
Again, I'm going to say, Jan, thank you for presenting this. I think, once again, I think you're just spot on of what is it that we're looking for.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Now, Alderman Cooper, this kind of addresses what you were asking. You know, the qualifications according to code must be 25 years of age. That's exceedingly young by my book, but that's okay. But the code says should have a master's degree in public administration or a related field. So should have being the operative word. That's one of those, if you really wanted it, you should have said must, but should have is one of those variables in my opinion. Now, some of the qualifications that go beyond that, chosen solely on the basis of executive and administrative qualifications with special reference to actual experience in or knowledge of accepted practice in respect to the duties of the office. Long way of saying probably has experience in it. But then we've got another solely that goes right below that, shall be based solely upon qualifications without regard to political beliefs or affiliations. And then during the tenure of office shall reside in the city and devote full-time performance of the duties to the office, meaning you're not going to be carrying another job someplace else. So those are the things, that's the parameters that we're dealing with. So that's what we've got, in the future. If you see, maybe we ought to change something in there, we can change it at a later date. This is what we're going with at this point. Okay. A bunch of questions for you. How do you envision this position to be? How do you envision that interaction? What do you expect out of this person?
Ralph?
Okay. Well, I mean, going back to some of the qualifications that you mentioned earlier, I think this person is a spokesperson for Branson, a cheerleader for Branson, a cheerleader for the employees of the city, and just someone that is not just, I guess, sitting in a box, but really out and observing the things that are going on in the different departments. Very interactive. I think that person should be, you said hands-on earlier, I think that level of interaction should be first and foremost, taking every opportunity. I kind of mentioned, it seems like a long time ago, but just a couple months ago that, I think we're not even hitting the result that Branson can be as an economic juggernaut in the Southwest Missouri area. We need someone that can see that and execute on that and make us that person, make us that kind of economic development, being attractive for entrepreneurs, being attractive for developers, just that whole complete, package right there. So.
Okay. All right. Now the big question is, are there any characteristics you want to avoid? You've all hired folks, or you've been through the employment process, you understand what that's all about. What are the traits that you avoid? An awkward pause.
It is awkward.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
I think if they meet the qualifications that you've presented to us, then they will have avoided the ones that we would choose not to.
Yeah. Well, I think, and just for my 2 cents, having been through this a number of times, somebody that does a lot of double speak. That's, when they try to impress you with their words, and they do, they can't speak in a plain, calm fashion with respect to, they're trying to dress it up, doll it up, and speak around in circles. Those are people that generally have not a clear understanding of what's expected of them, and they try to, kind of cloud the issues. That's the one issue that I always look for whenever I'm going through the interview and selection process. Give me straight answers. And if you don't know, you don't know.
I agree, and I correlate that with character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the big question for us is, do we engage a search firm for this kind of thing? Or do we use our own internal resources? I'll give you the pros and cons. The interview and selection process, we can probably manage all of that ourselves. We can have people come in, we can place ads, we can place, put brochures with different search firms and things like that, or ad agencies, that kind of thing. We can get it out there. That's not a big issue, and we can conduct the interview and selection process. What we don't know is we don't have that pipeline of candidates that somebody may be an assistant city administrator somewhere, ready to move up. Maybe somebody that's in a big organization ready to move up and be in charge of the city of Branson. We don't have that broadcast net where we can send out all of those emails to people that are looking for that kind of job. You know, you could probably, a search firm could probably send out 10,000 emails with one press of the button and communicate that and be far more effective in reach than our department could ever think of being. So, but there's a cost to that. Generally speaking, you can look at that anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000. It's a chunk of money, but it's real money that you have to consider. What's the benefits of that?
Jen, my understanding is, in the past, going for a search for city administrator, the city did use headhunters, search firms in the past. They are very expensive, and as I'm told, the results of that were less than stellar.
Right.
Is that fair?
I would say so, yeah. Part of the problem is managing the search firm. You know, not to toot my own horn, but I've managed multiple search firms, and I know what to look for and what not to look for, those kinds of things. So it's a balance that, you know, the effect that you've experienced or you've heard experienced here is going to be weighing heavily on your decision-making process. Again, it goes back to a cost too. What's the benefit for that cost if you pay $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 and don't get the results you want? You know, at the end of the day, this is something I always ask for in my budget, year after year after year, and year after year after year it gets ripped out. So at this point, we would have to go back and do a budget amendment for this kind of thing as well.
Go ahead.
So you saying you would recommend the search firm, or would you try to just do it yourself and then for a while, and then if things are slow, then move that direction?
It depends. A lot of it's going to depend upon the scope of what we want to do, how quickly we want to do it. Search firms are going to take longer.
Yeah.
You know, we do it internally, we could probably process it a lot quicker. Our reach isn't going to be near as broad, but it's one of those things that, can we do an effective job? Yeah. Can we do the best job possible? Can we touch every candidate that's out there? No, we can't.
So without a search firm process, what would you recommend? Indeed, some online?
We've got multiple
Applications?
sources online that target people that look for that kind of job. We'd go through that process, identify those. We'd probably still spend $15,000, $20,000 in advertising and things like that. But it's, you know, it's going to be to specific sites that we would go to and have it out there for a period of time. That's going to be our biggest expense. And then whenever you turn around and do your interview and selection process, there's an additional expense there as well. But we wouldn't be paying a headhunter for any of that.
Do you feel like this is a case that you get what you pay for, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily.
Because I mean, you may spend $75,000 and still, there's no guarantee.
We've done that. Yeah, the city has paid headhunters large amounts of money, and the person that was hired wasn't.
Yeah. That
Right.
doesn't sound attractive to me.
No.
Spending that kind of money.
If you don't have a good track record, it's always going to be one of those things you look at that says, you know, our track record that we've received, I should say,
Yeah.
is one of those things that says, it's not worth it to me.
Yeah.
Right.
So, did you have something, Lisa?
I just had a question. Is there a hybrid to that where you could pick up the legwork? Because obviously you do a lot of the legwork and the in-house legwork, but I heard you say getting those resources that moving that information out to attract more people. Is there a hybrid that somebody would offer that you could do a lot of the legwork and use that process?
There are some, yeah, but it's one of those that it's still going to be using a bit of the search firm for that pipeline, and then have them place do the broadcast search, email search or things like that, and give us that information back. But to that point, there are firms that will do that, and we could possibly employ a hybrid, but again, it's going to be one of those things. They're going to want, their money.
What I think I'm hearing from the board, oh, go ahead, Ruth.
And we can take advantage of, because I mean, this person, whoever this person is we want them to be very experienced. I think that's the most important thing. You can advertise through Missouri Municipal League, the National League, all the different organizations that would pinpoint the qualities that we're looking for. And with Branson, Branson is just a unique place. It's a very unique place in the United States. So if a headhunter is used or a firm's used, we're going to get loads and loads of applicants from all over the country, and then having to pay to bring them in. I mean, there's a lot of expenses associated. And if we started out not using a firm, because you're very qualified and you're an amazing judge of character, I believe that I would feel comfortable doing something internally versus starting out going with a national firm.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Fair enough.
And I'm agreeing with that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, if you would, Jan, just help narrow this down.
Okay.
Is, I don't think there's an interest in going with the headhunter route.
Okay.
So suggestions on either a hybrid or something that you do internally, because like Ruth said, you're very, very qualified in
Okay.
this.
Yeah, we're happy to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. The one thing, how do you compensate the position? You know, the one thing that we've been talking about, and we talked about in our directors meeting earlier, is coming up with a series of goals that people want to be, that the board needs fulfilled, and holding the city administrator accountable for those goals, and then have a thread through all departments for each of those goals, and employ that process for goal satisfaction as part of the compensation process. Coming up with a salary range, those kinds of things that you know about and you approve, and you understand where you want to start, where you want to end, those kinds of things, and those increases along the way. Relocation expenses, you know, again, that's going to be an additional cost. If we find somebody right next door, obviously our relocation expenses are going to be minimal. But at the end of the day, they would, by code, have to live within the city limits of Branson at some point during the tenure of their term. And that would then effectively cause almost anybody available to be relocating. So there's going to be an expense to that, generally speaking. Some of the constraints, though, to understand that from, you know, like the first thing you think of is, well, heck, let's give them a bonus if they hit all of their goals we give them. Well, we're kind of prohibited from that, just saying. So those are some of the things. We need to have a good structure for that kind of thing. And then I would love for the board to give me clear direction to help you evaluate the city administrator, how that's going to be done. Because I can give you my recommendations. We can do that at another time. But clearly, based on how we've done it in the past, hasn't been communicated well to the board itself. And we need to go through that process. And I think it would be best served if you generated those criteria on which you want to evaluate the city administrator's success or failures.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but with your extensive level of knowledge in this world, personally, I would really appreciate following your lead and your guidance in that. The changes I would like to see moving forward, living up to this open transparency that this board is really strong about, is you would be a key role in the interview process. Mm-hmm. I think this person, it would be healthy if they sat with each alderman. I think it would be healthy if they visited with directors. And, let me get your input on this, is something I've felt pretty strongly about. Have a open, in addition to sitting with board members and directors, have an open meeting where the applicants would be interviewed in a public setting. I think what's important is each director and each employee within the city, I think they should have a role and be involved with who it is that we're going to be hiring to run our city. I would want it to be open to the public. I have hesitation of opening public questions, but inviting the public to participate in that process. I think that's something that our community has not experienced in the past. Like you said, the board really didn't have that much involvement in the past. This is one of the 3 positions that the board hires the city administrator. So ultimately, I believe it is the board's decision, and I believe that's in code. But I think making this as open and as transparent as possible.
Okay.
Any opinions on that?
I agree, totally.
Well, I've got the next piece is I've got a question there. What's your preferred timeline? I understand the answer. Yesterday.
No, don't be silly.
Okay.
Tomorrow would be fine.
All right.
He understood the assignment.
But to your point, Mayor, with respect to the recommended steps, we do the recruitment, again, we'll go with the internal process, but the interview process, we can save a potload of money if we did online screening of
You bet.
folks. And we've got the capability, the infrastructure here where we can do that. I would like preferably board members associated with that. Obviously, if you have more than, you don't want to have a quorum or have to post that every single time for online screening because, to that extent, we could have 15 or 20 applicants and we could knock those out online quickly and easily. But, like if we were to do something like take the members of the HR committee, the board members of the HR committee with my team,
Yep.
and we could go through and we could knock out and thin that group down quite a bit.
That would be a great process to go through that initial and then narrow it down to the final.
And again, I think to a certain degree, we might want to consider assessments, an assessment center, if you will. The one thing that police and fire do is they have testing, if you will, that verifies people's understanding of various things. And coming up with, hey, fill out this spreadsheet for me. Let me show me that you've got this cognitive ability to understand the financials of this, or interpret this spreadsheet, or things like that that verify their capabilities and things like that.
And I'm not sure who would be appointed, but checking references would be very important.
Oh, absolutely. My team would be a part of that. I'd like to employ the police chief on that as well, but I'm not sure that he can do that legally in all the aspects that I would like to do it. But there's a lot of avenues that he's got that I don't have.
Chief gave a thumbs up. Thanks, Chief. For those watching online, that was a sidewise thumb, not a straight up.
And this next bullet item is just strictly from my experience, but I think we need to stick a crowbar in the wallet, pry out a few bucks, and go visit where this person was working. I've done that in the past, and it's been extremely enlightening. If if let's say somebody has Billings, Montana as where they worked before, make a trip up to Billings, Montana, and talk to the people up there. I guarantee you will be enlightened on some of the things you will find out. And that is one of the best search mechanisms I've ever used in the past.
Again, I will follow your lead. The board agree with that? Yeah.
Selection by the entire board. The one thing I'll want to do, I probably won't have to do with Alderman Denham, but sit down and kind of give you a basic primer on the interview and selection process. You know, asking somebody what church they go to, I'm going to ask you not ask those kinds of questions, just saying. That could get us in trouble. You know, there's some basic do's and don'ts on the interview and selection process. There's ways to get to the point of things you want to do and information you want to get. I want my team, Kimberly's fantastic at it, to be able to teach you how to go through all of these elements to make sure we're staying on the right side of the law. I don't want to deal with any EEOC claims over this, just saying, they're kind of tough. The human resources, and to your point, Mayor, inviting everybody we can in various processes. We've got the ability to poll people. You know, we can send out Survey Monkey polls and say, hey, let's say we start out with 15 candidates, we narrow it down to 2 or 3. We've got the ability to send out Survey Monkey polls saying, who do you like? Who do you don't like? Give me your comments, that kind of thing. So the board can gather that information, actual data, and have that help you make your decision. More often than not, you'll find it reinforces your point of view because a lot of people think the same way, especially whenever you're going through this entire process.
Thank you for saying that, and that aligns perfectly with one of my key words for this year, and that's collaboration. The more input we have, the more heads we have looking at this, we'll make a better decision.
Right. And then you'll meet in some kind of executive session, make your final decision, make your offer, and things like that. That I'm happy to help with as well. Anywhere through that process, coming up with your terms of employment, all of that fun stuff, and establishing a start date. The start date, always keep in mind that if you're going to offer employment to somebody who's already got a job, chances are they're going to be in a leadership role right now. And so in fairness to their current organization, they need to give 30 or 60 days notice. So once you make that offer, it's going to take a month or so because they'll have to, more than likely, have to relocate and things like that. So there's a myriad of things to look at and consider whenever it comes to that actual start date. Okay, and then we get to the interview process. Mayor, to your point, the public involvement, do you want select representatives to have a panel that meet and greet with these folks? Or do you want to have it wide open for people? How do you want that to look? I'm open to whatever. I think it's important to have the public involved in this, and I'll follow your lead.
I don't know if the board has any opinions. What I envisioned was during that public forum, ask the directors to be involved with that along with the board, and solicit any of our city employees that have questions to be able to ask or submit the questions in writing that will be asked of this person. And there again, I'd like the public to be involved in the sense of observing the process, but I think it would get too diluted and maybe get off track. So my 2 cents is ask the public to be involved, open it up to the public, but not necessarily go down the road of public questions.
Okay.
But any board members feel differently?
I think one idea might be, would be have the public maybe submit questions, and we could look at those questions and maybe pick, 2 or 3 or something like that,
Sure.
just so they feel like they're a little more
Sure,
part of the
okay.
process. And that allows us to maintain control of the interview process, and it doesn't get off in the weeds. So
Very
that's
nice.
something we can do.
That's a great idea.
You good? Okay, so
Yeah.
that's how the board feels?
Okay, yeah. My office can manage that, or Melody can manage that, and we would, obviously, I'd want to vet through the questions,
Yeah.
make sure they're appropriate, that kind of thing. And then the board involvement, I think we talked about it a little bit before the initial screening. You know, if you want the HR committee members to be involved with that, or who you want. That's a decision for you to make.
I would support HR.
Okay.
That's the role, that's where their experience is. Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay? And then, you know, your involvement in public forums, do you want that to be a public or an actual board meeting kind of thing? How would you like that to look? Or do you want to be off to the side and just have the candidates up here, that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on how, I mean, would it have to be listed or posted? I mean,
I think my opinion, I'd really appreciate the guidance from you and Lisa on when we get into those kind of details, the best way
Okay.
to handle that.
Gotcha. And those are the things, and we don't have to make those decisions right now, just something to start thinking about. And then finally, when you talked about your one-on-ones with the candidates, how do you want that structured? Obviously, you know, with the total of 7 of you, if each person spends an hour with you, that's 14 hours right there. If you have 2 candidates, that kind of thing, so.
Yeah, and maybe, and Lisa will give us guidance on this, maybe it can be two at a time, Lisa?
Yeah.
Just do it by words.
I think you could fashion it as a board orientation type rotation, maybe even.
Yes. Yeah.
Something that depends, as we get closer, what that structure would look like and how many candidates you choose to interview, so.
Yeah, the orientation
Yeah,
worked out
that
very well.
rotation, if it would work depending on how many candidates and everything. but-
Yeah, rotations work really well. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, I use this phrase, and I don't mean it to be disparaging or anything, but it's a little bit of a dog and pony show where you have the finalists up there and they're actually competing against each other, and they're in front of the community and could be employees as well. They're showing their capabilities, juxtapose somebody sitting next to them that's vying for the same job, that kind of thing. Get a little bit of that competition going, get a little bit of that public speaking ability, that articulation, all of that. Gets kind of fun too. All right, and then my wrap up here, what have I missed? What have I not? I know I've taken you an hour here, but what have I missed? What have I left out? What questions do you have? What concerns do you have? What do we need to do?
wow.
Again, I'm going to say, we have the expert providing advice to us that are not experts, and I'm very, very comfortable with your experience, Jan.
Okay. Happy to carry it forward for you.
Okay.
Okay? That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Jan.
The next item on the agenda is the update of plans for financial operations review and interim departmental leadership. Jan Fisher.
Yeah, that's me. I just wanted to kind of give you an update on what our intentions are. I have been in contact with a firm, multiple firms, and we've kind of boiled it down in an internal process of finding somebody that meets the needs of our organization and what we want to do. And I'm going to have at the next Board of Aldermen study session, hopefully if we can have it on June 9th, I would like to be able to do that, but have Baker Tilly come in. That's a firm, they do lots of different things. They do accounting, they do executive searches, things like that. But I'd like to have them come in. They've got a plan, they're developing a plan for us. I don't have all of the details. I don't have all of the costs yet. But I think this is an important function that we address head on, that we're looking at that someone who can bring in interim leadership while we're doing a search for a finance director. That's going to be important for us primarily because we got a budget to get done. And there's a lot of things that we need to do in preparation for that. There's a lot of questions that people have along the way. We're going to have finance committee meetings and things like that we need to be able to have information to carry forward to bring to the board so that we've got clear direction and things like that. We've got a lot of work to do. And right now, currently, I'm kind of watching over the finance department, but I'm telling you, I'm not the right person, even close, for long term. This is something that we can fudge our way through for a little bit, but I'd really like to get a firm in here. And the part with Baker Tilly, and they can talk to it more when they come in, and that is going to be, they can provide expertise in multiple areas. They can do your general ledger, your accounts payable, TIFs, things like that, where they may not have one person associated with each of those individual areas, but they've got multiple people that can help guide us through our processes. And that, to me, is going to be a big deal, because that's then going to lead into our, what I like to refer to as our attestation of our financial status. They would work with the auditors that we currently using, and work with them to establish a baseline for what is our true financial condition all the way across the board, that goes well beyond what the board would normally receive in an audit. But it just gives a lot more informational things that's broken down on something that's digestible by the board, so that you can understand what our balances are with respect to bank balances and investments and things like that. So you've got that clear picture of our financial picture. And from multiple sources. You've got our current auditors and then them doing a review of that audit as well. And then lastly, the piece that I really want them to be able to bring in, and that is the documentation process of our accounting processes. That's one thing that we currently don't have a good handle on at this point. My office doesn't, we don't have those instructions. I doubt that the clerk's office has those instructions. Those are things that whenever it comes to different financial requirements, they vary. And that's one thing. They should be fairly straightforward, and developing a document that articulates all those things, I think, is going to be very beneficial for all the departments. So that's what I'm looking at, is to have those folks come in and kind of help us through that process until we finally find someone who can fill that role.
Jan, I feel very strongly, and I hope the board feels the same way. What you're discussing right now is extremely important, and waiting 2 weeks for another study session, boy, that just, it doesn't fit in my brain. Is there any way we could expedite what you're describing?
They are, right now, they're working on their entire scope of everything. They hope to have it to me by the 3rd. It takes them a little bit of time to pull together their resources. I will go back to them and say, can we accelerate this a little bit? Because at the end of the day, we're still going to have to do a contract with them.
Yeah, and so I guess my suggestion might be, instead of waiting to have the full-blown plan, and I can understand why that would take time, maybe put it into segments. Do they have somebody who can come in and fulfill and start the process as we then take our time to go through the overall plan?
I can go back to them and inquire about that and see how quickly we can move.
How does the board feel?
Are you saying, go ahead, obtain somebody quickly as a?
From this firm.
Yeah, for attempt to,
Yeah.
just to get in here, yeah. Oh, no, I think that's definitely worth asking, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, just something to take into consideration, training, the first training that we're considering is June 9th and 10th. So if this was on June 9th, it would interfere with that as long as we had a quorum if we were going to listen to their presentation.
This is May 19th. I'm just saying that
Oh, yeah, before the 9th.
getting somebody in
Yes,
Okay.
at that initial level as we work out the global plan.
Okay.
right, to get in earlier, but if they're scheduled.
Study session on the 9th. is that what
Yeah,
you're
the
saying?
June 9th
Yeah.
study session that Jan had mentioned.
I can move and see what we can expedite. Absolutely.
Chuck, Ralph?
Sooner the better.
What's that?
Sooner the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right,
Thank you, Jen.
you bet.
Going the next, are we on the next agenda?
We're
item?
on the next one.
An update on the city attorney search.
We have multiple candidates in the queue as we speak, and we have a few viable candidates as well. The premise behind that, we've had this position open for quite a while. We've actually spent a fair amount of money on advertising for it, but the next step is to circle back through and have whomever with the board who wants to be a part of the interview and selection process. Or do you want Lisa and I to figure out how that happens from our perspective? What's your choice on that?
I'll be anxious to hear the board's opinion, but I'll go back to say, between you and Lisa, if you would narrow down the field, that would be greatly appreciated. Even come up with here's who we recommend and why. There again, that's one of the positions that the board is responsible for hiring. So I think it's important for the board to make that final decision based on your recommendations.
Is there already some interest out there?
We've got 8 applicants.
Oh, wow,
Very nice.
that's great.
Now, like anything, like in the Olympics, you're going to have a high and a low, that kind of thing. You might throw out the low and go for the middle and on up. So those are things that, we can go through together, or however Lisa wants to do it moving forward, we can then narrow that field down and bring the finalists to the board for a final review.
Lisa, you agree with that?
Definitely, and we can narrow it down and put a scale on it. HR does that often. They have kind of a grading scale to get some narrowed down. I do think, going back to what was discussed during the city administrator, there'll be a need to have a little bit of discussion and a vote probably to set the compensation on that. I mean, we need to come up with that structure also.
On the compensation plans, I think this board would really appreciate getting input and guidance on what market rates are. The starting point might be, and I'm not sure, I'm assuming there's been a precedent set on what our pay levels have been or pay ranges have been for these different directors. And so just mathematically, a starting point might be, what did we hire in the last administrator or director rate, add a cost of living increase to that and see where that falls.
Okay.
Maybe a starting point, but then again, we need to, I think it's important that we know what the market is out there.
Right. There's going to be some attorneys, if they're in private practice right now, making $200, $300, $400 an hour. We can't compete with that. That's way out of our range. So obviously, it's going to be less than that. So we'll come up with some guidelines for you to choose from.
And again, I think that the actual city attorney, which is a full-time position within the city, they attend our planning and zoning meetings. They attend our Board of Aldermen meetings. They need to have a skill set with Robert's Rules of Order, some municipal experience. But I don't think we need to pay a high-powered attorney to be our full-time attorney when we have the needs for that accelerated legal advice. On those occasions, we would reach out and pay the higher-priced attorneys to give us that legal advice. But for our day-to-day operations, I would sure like to see the city save money and have somebody who is maybe at the beginning of their career or not at the top of their career to sit in on a lot of our regular meetings.
Well, frankly, we may have some opportunities to find some individuals who are in the twilight of their career as well.
Great idea.
Somebody is looking for that transition between the active work life and retirement. Somebody that isn't after the big bucks kind of thing, that is looking to, I want one final position before I hang it up.
Yeah, and there will be occasions where we'll need a higher caliber attorney to give us some legal advice, but just pay for that level on a case-by-case basis. Board?
That totally makes sense.
Don't tell me, tell.
That totally makes sense.
You good?
Good, yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
will do.
Are we moving on?
We are moving on.
Update of plans for Planning and Development, Community Development Department operations, and that will be presented by, Jan.
Yeah. That's, we're working with community development. That is the name that they were monikered with the previous administration. However, it was not, we put the cart before the horse, let's put it that way. We did not bring that information, the code information, the titles, the names. We didn't do any of that, bring it to the board for approval. If you look in our code, nowhere in there is there anything about planning and development. Community development. There is everything about planning and development. And that's what we're dealing with at this point. So we want to look at that and say, what makes sense for what's working now and what doesn't make sense. Those things that make sense, we want to hang on to. Those things that don't make sense, let's put them back to the way they were. There's going to be some low-hanging fruit that we can address. We've already addressed some of it. But honestly, there's going to be things that we need to consider along the way as we go through this process. Lisa and I are highly involved with it. Michael Woods, he's kind of leading up that group at this point. He's done a phenomenal job in doing that. But he was saddled with a bunch of stuff that's way out of his wheelhouse and things like that. And hats off to Michael for as much work and effort as he's put in, and passion. That's the one thing that I appreciate very much. But when it boils down to it, we have to consider various things that I want to make sure that, the one thing that we've gotten feedback from the public on is the concept of having a lot of folks available at the same time from various ventures across the organization, from code enforcement, planning, plans review, things like that. They really like that. They like that ease, that streamlined effort. So those are the kinds of things we want to probably hang on to. But again, go back to the basic premise. There's been no code changes, no budgets set up for these things, and the board hasn't authorized anything. So that's something that we need to take a hard look at and say, okay, how do we come up with a hybrid of this, or whatever it is we're going to do, and make sure that this works and that the board then approves how it runs, because it's the board's department.
So, Jan, I've been confused with that whole process. I know we've had the open for business, which the community appreciates. And I know that there's been some changes with helping developers, contractors work through their processes, which have all been positive. What I've struggled with is the formation of the Community Development Department that we refer to as the CDD. That CDD creation hasn't gone through any processes. HR hasn't heard about it, Budget and Finance hasn't heard about it, the Board of Aldermen haven't heard about it. There's been no approvals on creating a new department within the city of Branson, which has caused a lot of concern and heartache and frustration. And I know in visiting with Lisa, she sure sees that process going by code, by getting approvals. And I know you and Lisa have been working on that. I'm really not sure how familiar this board is with that process, but I believe what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing you say, is we're either gonna unwind that CDD department, or we're going to modify it, and if there is going to be a new department, it will go through the proper processes and get board approval to create something.
Absolutely. First and foremost, we have to do that.
We have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any board input? Lisa, anything you want to share?
Well, I certainly agree with Jan that there are some, I think we can look from the January 1st date to now. We should take that as a great opportunity to evaluate. It was a trial, it was a test, it's okay. I mean, we accepted, it's good. There's great employees, they did a great job, they're doing a great job. And so we should look at that. And we should acknowledge those processes and procedures and what has worked and embrace them. And I think we should look at it as a positive opportunity that we've had to experience that and see what we can do with it.
Absolutely. And I did want to take a minute and publicly thank Mike for the job that he has been doing and is doing. Thank you, Mike.
The one thing I want to kind of touch on a little bit here has to do with the employees themselves. They've put their heart and soul into this. They want it to be successful. They're fully invested in the process. And, you know, this is somewhat unsettling. The fact that we're talking about it today is unsettling to them because they feel like, okay, I didn't have a whole lot of input when it got moved over here, and now I'm not going to have a whole lot of input taking it out. I don't want to make the same mistakes we made going into this whenever we change it, modify it, or exit one of those things.
Thank you so much for saying that. And that goes back to the culture changes where we really want to invite collaboration and getting those that these decisions affect, having them involved with the process, for sure.
Absolutely. Another thing I want to point out is the fact that, you know, we're going to lose 2 employees. We've got that for certain. There's a possibility of losing some more along the way to retirements. Those are things that could have a significant impact on how it operates. Even from, let's say we were to unwind it completely, it's going to have a significant impact. So we would need to address that, and we need to address the 2 upcoming vacancies as quickly as possible. We've got an aside point, and I don't mean to hold anybody in a bad light, but we've got 2 planners who have very little tenure with the city. And these folks are in a position right now where they could use some serious leadership. I think one of the things I'd like to be able to do is find somebody that can lead that department on a full-time basis. I'd want to, you know, ask Michael's help and things like that to be able to get that accomplished. And then have you know, again, I go back to Michael. He's doing yeoman's work doing that. And his learning has been trial by fire, and that's never comfortable for anybody. And hats off to him for stepping up and sticking with it. But I'm sure from a stress level, it's got to be hammering him. And that's the kind of thing I want to be able to help him with. And then, you know, putting back, you know, unwinding everything. If we move to go that route, we need to make sure we do it in a concerted effort. Change management is one of those things that people talk about, but and this is a situation we truly need to employ it. To your point, Mayor, we need to make sure we involve people, because we can make our decisions and we can get acclimated to it, but then we hold off on that information for a while, and it becomes then fresh to somebody else. It becomes a little disconcerting to them based on not having any control over the outcome of the decision. So these are things that, you know, this is the update, if you will, but it's a work in progress, and we're all working hard on trying to resolve and come up with the best solution possible.
Yeah. So I know when we talked earlier about different aspects of what we're looking for in leadership, this is a great example where Mike has the most important element, and that's character. And these other things are learned skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can't emphasize that enough.
Well, and also I don't think it's good or fair for people to be blindsided. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Hey, here's what we're doing. You know what I mean? It's not good for the morale. It's just,
Right.
the more input that everybody shares, the better off it is, as opposed to just coming in, swinging a door wide open, saying, this is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Like it or leave it.
You know, you can lead a bull by the nose, but you can't lead people that way.
Yeah.
You can lead a bull by the nose.
It hurts, but you can.
It hurts when you lead people by the nose, too. I appreciate all that you've brought up. I really appreciate all the directors and all the employees to adapt to our new mindset of culture changes. Collaboration is important. I, for one, have had a pleasure to speak with many directors and some employees on a one-on-one basis. I think that's healthy. I think I'll make it clear that the directors have an open door to myself, any alderman, for these collaborative discussions moving forward. The employees in each department, encouraging you to openly share with your directors on the input that you have. This is, we're going to have more of a democracy of how decisions are made at the city level, followed with transparency to the public. So is that the conclusion?
That's it, sir.
So with all that Jan has said, which is a lot, open for comments from the board.
Hey, I appreciate, I mean, that was a lot of preparation, that took a lot of work and research, and very informative, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. You've been busy, very busy. Also, just for this item that we're speaking about right now, item number 5, do you have just a summary of what the process will look like as far as hearing from the employees and the directors, and which way to go that you and Lisa are going to?
We're working through that process to meet. I've met with a couple of the folks in leadership in that area. I want to follow back up and start doing one-on-ones with different individuals and things like that to get their input across the board. You know, there's a couple of groups I haven't even seen in 2 or 3 weeks, so I need to reacclimate them and myself to, we need to just get together and talk about it and go through the whole process. I want Michael there through the whole piece and get his 2 cents along the way.
Thank you.
It's very comforting to me knowing that you and Lisa are actively soliciting their inputs before unilateral decisions are being made.
Oh, absolutely.
That means a lot.
Chuck, you got anything?
Will all the department heads be involved in this decision too? All the other directors?
To a certain degree, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be some that, I will be facilitating, but the community development department doesn't directly affect my work. So, as many as involved in the process overall, obviously the police chief, the fire chief, Michael, the whole 9 yards. We'll get as many people as touch the process as necessary.
Well, I'm gonna kind of lean off on like Friday's event where all you guys were like present and presented to us as the aldermen that 30,000-foot view of your departments and how important the structure was at that point and things like that, and understanding that this isn't us upending a boat or anything. It's really we got to figure out like Lisa said, like what's working and then how do we fit code to fit what's working. And so it's not a matter of dismantling or upending. It's really about reorganizing and making the code fit the procedures that are going on within the organization. You guys did an amazing job presenting all that information, and I know you guys kind of put some of those presentations together on the fly. I did mention yesterday that police won the presentation award. Yeah, good job. But when Mayor talks about this shift in culture, understand the shift in culture is not for us. The shift in culture is for you. Like, I think it's incumbent on the board to make City Hall a pleasant place for you to come and work, a pleasant place for the residents to come and visit and get their business done. And we want to make sure that you guys have all of the tools and all of the information to make that possible. And, the department heads that spoke to us, in my heart, like after Friday, my wife asked me, what did you learn? And I said, I learned that every single person that is in a leadership role at this city at this time is 100% committed to making this city a better place. And I think we have a board that's willing to facilitate that for you. So please, my ask is that as we move forward, and Jan said this transition should be respectful and smooth. I don't remember exactly the words you used, but that's how we want it to be. Whatever happens, know that we're doing it for you, not against you. And so I appreciate everybody's input on that. Thank you.
Alderman LeBlanc, I can't agree more with what you just said. One example is that you probably all know about Gretna Road, the broken
Yes.
Right.
water line. The efforts that we've gone through internally to try to knock down barriers so that we can get that fixed. And Keith and Kendall both have been working through that to try to get it done. We're working, we want to get busy and get started on it.
Yeah. And I think I would also like to publicly share that we are in the middle of celebrating National Public Works Week. And some board members and myself had the pleasure of serving lunch to our Public Works and Utilities Department. So hopefully I was making a very proud and complimentary message yesterday during that lunch that we couldn't be any more proud of those two departments. Not to say we're not proud of all, but that is their week and they get the recognition. Thank you, guys. Any other comments from the board or from Jan or Lisa? Wow. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, and thank